Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's session of What's in Store. With me, my partner in crime who needs no introduction, Amy McDonald. Amy, how are you?
Hey, good to see you. Thanks for having me back. I can't believe that I keep getting invited back here.
Yeah, I couldn't find anybody else, so I just figured I'd keep
Ah,
asking you.
okay.
Amy,
Now I
for
know the
me
secret.
I wanted to start by asking you a question. Can I have $100 billion with a B?
Can you? Of course you
Yeah,
can. Of course you can. Is that like in a reference to how much retailers spend on fraud prevention
no,
annually?
no, that's how much fraudsters are stealing from
Oh.
retailers annually. So I just figured if these retailers are giving away their money, how do I get on board?
Isn't it
Um,
crazy like that? I mean, the amount of work that retailers go through to actually sell their product, to brand their product and create loyalty, and then fraud related, instances can just be the death of all of that.
well, and it's amazing just how smart these people are. Before it was so easy to pick up on fraud. You have someone saying that they're a prince from another country, but to prove you're not into money, buy them something, wire transfer or an Apple gift card. It's easy to spot, but in retail, they're so smart. And so I figure what's in store today should be talking about how we fix retail fraud because there
And
are
how do you
ways to
reduce
mitigate.
how do you reduce those vulnerabilities, right? Like that's probably the biggest thing. You're never going to wipe it all out, but there are absolutely ways to reduce the vulnerabilities and remove the risk from your organization.
Tell me more.
Tell you more. So there's actually fraud detection tools. They work on machine learning that it promptly signals a potential fraud issue. It gives an extra layer of protection to make sure that you're detecting it in the right timing. Speed is super important to be responsive to fraud, and then it offers fraud monitoring for your team to improve the overall customer experience. It's a super cool overlay that is very, very lightweight, but monitors um, you know real-time data, and it combines it with contextual data to really detect what these anomalies are.
That was a lot of big words. You sound really smart when you use the big words. But, I
All
think
I have to say is machine learning, and then I feel like I'm smart, right? Like AI, machine learning, and then I've nailed it.
But and I think one of the big things that gets confusing, and it works out well because I just respond to the things that have confused me before I learned about it. But is it this idea that there's fraud protection? Now, someone has done something fraudulent, and you get triggered later an email saying, "Hey, Amy McDonald charged from a weird account. This might have been fraudulent," but then there's this lag time where this person could have easily gotten away with it. Is that a concern, or how long does this process take? Is it more time? Is it manual?
No, right? So with machine learning, that's the beauty of this. You get to have this human element with an automation handoff. So you can have the automation identify and detect it, then it hands it off to a human who can actually deal responsibly with the instance, whether that means removing that seller from a marketplace, whether it means blocking those kind of purchases, or if it's doing a further investigation to figure out where that fraud is transpiring from. That's what we do to stop the fraudulent activity.
So when you say fraud from happening, how do you detect this type of fraud? Does that mean that, you used a wrong credit card name, a number? I mean, I think that's an easy one. The credit card was declined, but are there other types of fraud that's happening?
I mean, there's product fraud, right? Where people are purchasing a certain product and then they've gotten an inauthentic product looking very similar and go and try and return it as the original item. There are so many different areas of fraud that retailers are having to deal with outside of just basic credit card fraud, that it really is helpful to have a larger team that leverages some automation, but is also having this human touch into the understanding of the actual journey so that it can be prevented. And let's also not forget about predictive analytics and how some of this machine learning is not only being just responsive on the back end to seeing fraud, but can be proactive on the front end, understanding what trends look like. When people are starting to create suspicious activity, how do you immediately start monitoring that so that before the fraud occurs, you have the insights to know this is the likelihood of it progressing into an activity that you really are not trying to harness within your org.
See, I think what I can compare it to best was Black Friday. I had done all my research on what I wanted to get, all my Christmas gifts and Hanukkah gifts. I celebrate both, but I made a list. And so by the time Black Friday came, it's just click, 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 purchase, purchase, purchase. And Chase is immediately like, is this you? You're spending kind of a lot of money in kind of a short period of time. So would you say,
Milliseconds, right? It is as quick as it needs to be to, like I said, prevent an activity from happening or proactively identify that an activity might occur. So yes, speed to action is super key.
and so I think, fraud prevention, and again, I'm just going to make comparisons that I think everybody knows about. Is this like Norton security where you plug it in and then your computer's just covered forever? Or is this I can tell from your head shaking that I'm incorrect.
I mean, that's the beauty of the machine learning portion, right? It gets smarter as the activity gets larger, right? So the more instances that it sees, the more that it can predict, the more that it can understand trends, the more that it can be a preventive tool so that you're no longer chasing after the fraudsters, but you're preventing the fraudsters.
Do we have any examples of anything that we've done for this that maybe you could share, like a number or a stat?
I mean, I just love that you're asking me this question as if you don't already know the answer. I mean, one of our organizations that we partner with closely with, they've been a customer of ours for over 10 years. We actually run their fraud team, and in over the course of 5 or 6 years, we've saved them about $16 million in preventative fraud.
That's insane because really, I don't think a lot of companies think about fraud uh, until it's too late, or really aren't paying attention to how much they're losing on fraud. And also, just to let you know, I did know the answer to that question. These interviews are really
Amazing.
fun for me because I just get to play dumb the whole time, and you get to seem really smart, which you are, but it seems a lot easier for me to play
It
this.
feels like role reversal a couple of times, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And then, is there anything else that you want to add? I think that we've covered pretty much everything that I wanted to discuss today.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would sum this up with is let's don't forget about the fraud piece, right? Everybody's so worried about the customer experience piece, but the reality is that when fraud happens, a company's reputation, revenue, productivity, their own stability in the marketplace is really at risk. So when every second matters when you're dealing with fraud, you should really be considering the solution that you have in place that is extending out to the contact center as well as a preventative measure.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that your BPO can absolutely help you with this. And not only make sure that you have the right fraud measures, but that your fraud measures are ever changing. So I think that's one of the benefits of working with a BPO is that it's going to change with the times. It's going to grow with the new technology, and you're always going to it's never going to become a dinosaur to you.
The fun
Just
part about chasing fraud is that as much as the fraudsters can figure out new tips and tricks, we have to figure out new tips and tricks on the backside to be the preventative organization. So yeah, you're right. Ever changing kind of approaches to make sure that we're not just looking at what happened yesterday, but we're projecting what's going to happen tomorrow, and we can stay ahead of that curve.
thank you so much, Amy. This is so much fun as always. And if anybody listening has any questions, You can find us online at t.tec.com, or you can email either of us. You can see how our names are spelled if you just add a period in between the first and last name at t.tec.com. Thank you guys so much. We'll talk to you next time on What's in Store.